Right, we are live. Good morning, everyone. So, interesting topic today. So, looking forward to this one. So, how can you read charts quickly is the subject. That's essentially the question I've got, is how can I go about reading a chart quickly? Now, straight away, to me, that creates almost two questions that we can look at. It's almost two frameworks, two questions that you've got to consider. So it's how do you go about a process so that you, essentially, how do you set up your charts so reading them becomes more effective, more efficient, and you do that quickly. But it's also a simple question, I think, is how do you get better at it? So how do you set your charts up and how do you set your process up? And then how do you get better? So I'm going to answer the first one because I think this is really something that a lot of traders forget. Is traders come in and they want to get to the point where they're making the decision about the trade and they want to be in the market and they want to be in the position. And I get that. I was exactly the same when I started out. It was almost like, right, let's just get the analysis done and now all I want to do is place the trade. When in fact, what I think a lot of people forget is that really learning to trade, and the first thing that all our students get taught on our Kickstart program is analysing a chart. And the first thing that I do with anybody once they come into my trading room, regardless of whether they've traded before or they're completely new, is the first thing I want to see is how good are they at reading charts. And it isn't that I have the expectation that they've got to be exceptional at it, but I want to see where they're at. And primarily what I'm looking to see is how they can progress from where they are. Because a lot of people forget that reading a chart has an art element to it. It isn't purely scientific. Your discretionary analysis process, as we call it, gets you to a point where you then look for the trade setup or look for the strategy that you've already tested. So I think the first thing that people need to remember is it is a skill. And like any skill, the more you do it, the better you can get at it. I think a lot of people come into trading a little bit like they've walked into a gym and they want to do 150 kilogram bench press on their first go and wonder why they can't do it. Or they get frustrated because when they first look at a chart and I critique it, what happens is they look at it, I show them the chart and I'm like, that could be better, that could be better, that could be better. And they feel really bad that they haven't got it right first go. So a lot of people are looking to get the chart analysis right first go. And for me, I think they're coming at it from completely the wrong process. They should be looking to get better at it, more effective at it, and refine their process. So number one, the way to read charts more quickly is do it more often and practice it more often and get better at it. Put the reps in, as a good friend of mine will say. You've got to put the reps in, you've got to look at a lot of charts. And this is something that we do on a Wednesday night. Funnily enough, we've just done this. We've just done this week, where I get all my guys in the room to actually send in their analysis of exactly the same chart. So you've got 30 odd people sending in the same analysis. But what's great for each of those is they get to see everybody else's analysis. So what that does is that gets them re-looking at the same chart over again. Which leads me on to the next point. If you want to get better and quicker at reading charts, feedback's important, because the challenge a lot of people can have is that they're reading a chart, they're doing something wrong, or they don't know how to look at the chart in a different way, and as a result, what happens is they don't actually get any better. So they may speed the process up, because reading a chart more quickly doesn't mean you're necessarily reading it more effectively. The goal should be to get efficient at reading your chart and get better at refining that process, and the speed at which you do that comes after. So feedback is really important, because I can show somebody who's been reading a chart a certain way for 5, 6, even 7 years, they're simply using too many lines. So something we were discussing last night in the room is a lot of people will draw support and resistance lines on as a form of best fit. And then what I said to them is, well, where did you learn that? Well, I read it in a book, or I saw it on a YouTube video. And I said, but you've got to be able to relate that to how you want to trade. So a lot of people will go, gosh, you really got through that chart quickly, Ali. And you only spent a couple of minutes analysing the weekly and the daily before you'd consider whether you trade on that chart. And I said, well, number one, I've done it a lot. And two, I'm using my analysis relative to the type of trade I want to do. Because a lot of people will go about chart analysis from almost like a point scoring perspective. So they're almost looking for as many different things as they can. So they almost think that if they've got 5 trend lines and 6 support and resistance lines and 4 indicators lined up, somehow by having more things and seeing more things, what they're essentially doing is scoring more points and are going to be more successful. When in fact, the best traders I know, their charts are actually very simplistic and they often have less on. So a way to get more quick at reading charts is think what is relevant for the type of trade I'm doing. But the challenge there is a lot of traders don't or haven't categorized the type of trade they're doing. So if I'm looking for an against the trend position up at a resistance, then that resistance becomes the primary issue. And everything that I do on my analysis is based around that. And a trend line from 3 years ago that has no relevance to what's going on doesn't win me any points. So when you're doing this, if you want to get quicker at reading your charts, is make sure you're using your technical analysis skill set and tools that are relevant to what you're doing. Now the next one, an easy one for traders to get quicker at, is examine how many technical tools you have. So this is a classic one. Somebody will join us and they'll send in their first chart analysis and they've got fib lines, support and resistance lines, supply and demand levels. They've got 3 indicators below the price chart. And very often all they've got to do is just take that off. So again, I'll ask them which of these is relevant to the type of trade you're doing. And very often they can't answer me because they're in this mindset of having more stuff on a chart means more chance of success. So one of the things I say to a lot of our students is you should only ever have 1 indicator below the midline, maybe 2 depending on the type of trade that you're doing. So don't have your charts stacked up with indicators. Make your initial focus the price area. And again, even there, don't have moving averages, fibs, all different things, tons of stuff. My charts are very simple in terms of what you see on them. So that's really about getting quick and helping you get more efficient within using your charts. But there's a whole other way that you can improve your efficiency and speed, which is your process. So one of the things I teach all of our swing traders in our room is to have a weekly analysis process. Because where a lot of traders will go wrong is, let's say they've got 40 markets on their watch list. So they've got all their 40 markets. What they'll do is every day or every other day, they will scan through each of them. And the challenge there is they will take a big chunk of time going through charts that aren't relevant to what they want to trade, or what will happen is they will spend too long on each of those and they'll get 10 charts in and suddenly they've got no idea or they're not focusing on their chart. It's a little bit like when you read a book. You can easily read a couple of pages of a book and not have taken in anything that you've read. So the challenge is, if you're spending too much time detailing every element of 40 markets, invariably what will happen is you'll miss the potential opportunities. So with our swing traders, I encourage them to have 2 full analysis sessions in a week, possibly 3, depending on what the markets are doing. And during those periods, what I get them to do is that's where they go through all 40 markets top to bottom. And what they then do is, rather than analyze each one of those markets in detail, they will look for the key element on each of those markets relevant to the strategy. And if on market 4 they see that price is reaching a key level of resistance and that's relevant to their strategy, that market will get moved from their main watch list into the relevant strategy watch list. So it's essentially like a filtering process. So what that means is, when they next come to analyze that market or analyze the charts or look for potential trades, they only have to go through their short list. So essentially what they're doing is they're going through a filtering process. So they go down, 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 pick one market, move it across, pick the next market, move it across. So that movement or that classification from a market that's just on a watch list to now being a potential trade is only one element. And this is the key. I get them to go through those 40 markets and move across the possible trades. But when they move it across, they don't analyze it any further. what they do is they keep going through the 40 markets, filtering. Then I get them to take a break, then go through the 6 markets in more detail or the 4 markets in more detail. And if none of those trades are ready to set up, then the next day they don't have to go back through their 40 markets because they've already done that filtering. They only have to go back through the ones on the possible list. And what that means is they're then way more focused and they're looking for the next step in the trade process. So what that does is that makes the trader more efficient and it speeds up the process, and they're not wasting time on irrelevant analysis. As I've said already, I see a lot of people almost point scoring with their analysis rather than thinking, what is relevant to the trade? Can I filter that into my possible list? And if so, can I then put the detail in on 4 or 5 markets rather than trying to put the detail in all 40 markets? So I'd say they are the key things. Is make sure that to get better at this, you look at it as a craft, you look at it as a skill, and you practice your chart analysis and practice reading charts. Get feedback from somebody who's been doing it a long time and can pick up on little things. So maybe things that essentially are only 20% of the process but will have an 80% impact on your speed. And then think about how you go about analysing charts over a daily and a weekly basis to make sure you're making best use of that time. So that's it for today. Hope that was useful. I will be back again with you soon.